What's up, everybody? It's the Alex Leak and Friends NFL podcast, back for another week. I'm your host, Alex Leak. This is the co-host, Gavin.
With my Cheez-Its.
And we're ready to talk some preseason football, some training camp football, a lot going on this time of year. Let's start right off with the Cleveland Browns in a surprising trade, trading wide receiver Corey Coleman to the Bills in exchange for a late-round pick. This is the second time in less than a year that Buffalo has traded for a first-round wide receiver. Gavin, what did you make of the Coleman trade to Buffalo? It kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising. Not from the Bills' end, though. It definitely makes sense. As you mentioned before, they traded last year for Kelvin Benjamin out of Carolina, and that was to supplement their wide receiver core, which after Sammy Watkins left, really didn't have much of anyone last year, and it kind of remains true this year. Zay Jones is projected to be, they were hoping that he would be a starter for them, but didn't do much last year, and so they're hoping that Corey Coleman, who did have some success when he played for the Browns, can be a good number two on their team. But he's only played 19 games out of the 2 seasons that he's played, so dealt with some injuries. But he has shown some skill, and being a first rounder, you would expect him to. So hopefully this can work out for the Bills, who really paid next to nothing and didn't risk much in trading for him.
Yeah, it's a good get for the Bills. Add him to Kelvin Benjamin and Zay Jones. That's a decent receiving core now, getting those 3 guys. Hopefully, yeah, like you said, Corey's history has been a little bit injury hit, so hopefully he can stay healthy. Going along with that, maybe the reason that he got traded had something to do with injuries or not practicing playing through injuries. On Hard Knocks last night, episode 1 of it, Browns' newly acquired star wide receiver Jarvis Landry steals the show with a speech to his wide receiver teammates, pretty much talking about how unless you have like a broken leg or a major injury, he wants to see you out practicing, and how the Cleveland Browns need a culture change, and they need toughness, and you can't just be skipping out on practices. What'd you make of the Jarvis Landry speech?
Really solid motivational speech, and it's good to see Landry is stepping up and trying to be a leader in this new locker room on his new team. So good on him for doing that, and definitely the right message that guys need to be able to fight through a little bit in practice so that they can be better in the season. The more work they put in now, the better their season's going to be, and they don't want to keep being the Browns. They don't want to be the butt of every joke in the NFL. They want to be a new winning team, and practicing through some minor injuries can definitely push you over the edge in some games.
Yeah, I agree with you. As a Jarvis Landry fan, I like to see him showing his leadership there and being an outspoken presence in that locker room, something Cleveland desperately needed. Speaking of that, with injuries or not with injuries, but add Corey Coleman to the list of first-round draft picks that the Browns have let go now. Going all the way back to 2012, in 5 years, they have gotten rid of 8 first-round draft picks. That's not a good sign, is it, Gavin?
No, it's not a good sign at all. And if you look at some of their picks, some of them have been from trades, but some of them have been they're also trades, but just because they've been poor talent. Guys like Trent Richardson, Brandon Whedon, Barkevius Mingo, Johnny Manziel. These guys, some of them aren't even in the league anymore, and others are serving as second and third string positional players, and that's not what you want to see from someone you drafted in the first round 6 years ago. You want to hope that person's still starting and a solid role in their team. You can only imagine how good their team would be if these guys or players that they could have picked would have been able to be on their team and actually drafted guys that were, worth the talent. I followed the draft process a lot, and I can tell you that a good number of these guys were reaches or one-year wonders in college that they took flyers on that didn't pan out. So got to question the front office decisions, but I know that it's a new front office now, so can't put this blame completely on the people in charge at this point.
Yeah, hopefully John Dorsey can turn around that franchise. I mean, looking at that, you want to know how to go 1-31? That's by missing on 8 first-rounders in 5 years. First-rounders have to be a hit, have to be a home run, and if you're constantly missing on those, you're going to suck. And Cleveland has definitely sucked for the past at least 2 years, and it's been a while since they've been even contenders in the division. Let's switch to Bills wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin, who we brought up briefly. On him talking about his time in Carolina, he says, quote, "Looking back on it, I should have just been drafted by somebody else. I should have never went to Carolina. Truly, I just think Carolina was bad for me. If you would have put me with any other quarterback, let's be real, any other accurate quarterback like Rodgers, Eli Manning, or Big Ben, anybody. Quarterbacks with knowledge that know how to place a ball and give you a better chance to catch the ball. I just felt like I wasn't in that position," end quote. That seems like a direct shot at Cam Newton, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it seems really out of kind of out of nowhere, like to trash Cam Newton, who was the MVP of the league not too many years ago, and has not been short of receivers who have had success with him. Think of Steve Smith, Greg Olsen, and even Ted Ginn was successful with Cam Newton.
Devin Funchess?
Devin Funchess has been pretty good. So I don't know what Kelvin Benjamin's talking about. He's talking about making a catchable ball. We got to ask him why his catch percentage was lower in Buffalo than it was with Cam Newton that same year.
Oh, wow.
So, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers and Big Ben, Brady, the elites in the league, which I think that Cam Newton is, right up there as well. But now he's playing with, it's going to be A.J. McCarron or Josh Allen that's probably going to be throwing him the ball. So I'm not sure how they're going to feel if they start to struggle, and he's not catching the ball, he's not getting, 60, 80 yards a game. How is he going to feel? How are they going to feel with knowing that he can badmouth former teammates like that?
Yeah, and I think the Bills head coach came out and said he didn't really like Kelvin Benjamin doing that. And as a teammate or former teammate of Benjamin, you can't be happy about that, and it doesn't show great. Doesn't seem like a great guy to have in your locker room, but we'll see. Hopefully Kelvin Benjamin can bounce back, have a better year, and up his catch percentages.
Yeah, but he also, and this is also coming from the guy that showed up every offseason out of shape, overweight, looking like the Marshmallow Man, looking like a linebacker coming in to play receiver. He's never known for his speed, but I don't know. This guy I feel like doesn't have the place to talk about Cam Newton especially.
Yeah, this Kelvin Benjamin is a far cry from the Kelvin Benjamin that caught the game-winning touchdown in the national championship from Jameis Winston while at Florida State.
Sure.
Let's keep it going with wide receivers. The Patriots release wide receivers Malcolm Mitchell and Jordan Matthews, and then they go out and sign wide receiver Eric Decker. Do you think these are good moves for the Patriots? Do you like Decker coming in, and are you sad to see Mitchell or Matthews leave?
I am sad to see Mitchell leave. He showed a lot of promise his rookie year, but has just been plagued by injuries ever since. So I think the Patriots felt like they just needed to cut ties with him and try to bring in some players that can stay on the field. I was also sad that Matthews was released. Same thing. Showed a lot of promise in Buffalo, and in Philadelphia, but just couldn't stay on the field. And I was really excited to see someone with that kind of talent play with Brady. But it's the Patriots are going to be in short supply of receivers this year, with Edelman being gone for 4 games. Amendola and Cooks have left. Their starting wideouts right now are looking like Edelman once he comes back, Chris Hogan, and then you're looking at guys like Cordero Patterson, who was a first-round pick from Minnesota. Has a lot of talent, is still really young, but has kind of fizzled off since his rookie year. Philip Dorsett, first-round pick from Miami and in Indianapolis, but has never really lived up to the expectation. That's playing with Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Kenny Britt, 10-year vet, who's dealing with a hamstring injury right now and hasn't really done much since his contract year in St. Louis and struggled with the Browns last year. So you always trust the Patriot way, and that they'll figure it out. Some random receiver will end up being an All-Pro after this year, but as of right now, it's hard to see what that is. Maybe it's Decker. He'll go back to his form when he was catching a touchdown almost every single game when he played for the Jets.
Yeah, put me down as a Malcolm Mitchell fan and a Jordan Matthews fan, and I hope that they bounce back and land somewhere where they can resurrect their career a little bit. I'm pretty surprised that Malcolm Mitchell didn't work out in New England, but like you said, injury problems can hurt anybody's career. So we'll see what goes on going forward, see if the Patriots add any depth to their receiving core and what happens. I'm going to talk about Bears rookie linebacker Roquan Smith, who still has yet to report, still has yet to reach a contract agreement with the Bears. I was thinking this, and I heard this on ESPN Chicago radio. Last year, if you remember, when Danny Trevathan was suspended one game for the hit on Packers' Devontae Adams, he didn't lose any guaranteed money on that hit. And I'm wondering if it's the new rule or if it's a rookie. Why is it so important to the Bears to not guarantee Roquan Smith's money, especially if he were to get suspended for a hit like that? I don't really see what's changed other than it may be the new rule. What do you think on that, Gavin?
Yeah, my understanding is that they've gotten past the ruling situation, and now it's there's been reports that it's been about 6 different things, that they've resolved one thing, then nothing comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure exactly what the situation is. One report I read said that every rookie contract included the same language that was included in Roquan Smith's, including Leonard Floyd and Mitch Trubisky, the first-round picks from the previous 2 years. But with the new rule and the ambiguity of some of the verbiage that's used in there, it's kind of up to the club to determine what they figure out, what they feel is detrimental to the organization. And so they really could pick anything, even a post-game interview where he questions some coaching decisions, that could be viewed as detrimental to the organization, and then he loses money.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that maybe this is why Roquan's standing up and trying to set a new standard. And this is not new for him. He did the same something similar when he went to college. He verbally committed to UCLA but never signed a letter of intent, and went to Georgia but didn't sign a letter of intent for that either. And the reasoning for that was because there's parts – it's like a contract that they sign that can take away some of the rights of the players, and that was the reason why he didn't do it. And so that's it could be that he's not going against changing the standards, and he might be trying to not make an example of Chicago, but use this as a way to show other players that you don't have to sell your soul to be able to play in the NFL. But we've yet to see if that's true.
Yeah, and I know that his agent is the same agent that represented Joey Bosa when he had his holdout with the Chargers. And I hope it doesn't go to that level, which it pretty much almost already is. And then on top of that, I've heard that, some Bears are blaming Roquan or turning on Roquan over this. And I just say that you're an idiot if you're doing that, because this isn't... The fact that fans continue to side with these billion-dollar owners, and they continue to side with management, owners and the team, these players are the ones that go out there and risk their bodies every week to put on a great product for us. And I think you should, most of the time, side with the player and side with guaranteed money and side with these guys getting taken care of better than they have been in the past. So hopefully it works out, although Bears head coach Matt Nagy was quoted as saying Roquan talks are at a stalemate. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully this gets figured out sooner than later. As a Bears fan, I'm already getting a headache just thinking about it. Let's switch. Let's stay in the NFC North and talk about some Green Bay Packers. Some bad news for them. Former Michigan linebacker Jake Ryan tears his ACL, done for the season. He was expected to have a big year, so a big loss for Green Bay there. And then the quarterback news, Packers are progressing towards Aaron Rodgers' contract extension, and they're hoping to get it done before Week 1. Do you see Aaron Rodgers getting a new deal and possibly being the highest paid player going into Week 1?
If he does get a deal, he'll definitely be the highest paid player. I mean, anyone that signs a contract these days that is, remotely elite becomes the highest paid. Andy Dalton even held that for a little bit. So
Jay
that
Cutler?
shows you the ways of contracts.
Yep.
But it's definitely in the Packers' best interest to sign Aaron Rodgers for obvious reasons. He is possibly the best quarterback in the league right now, and the success of any team revolves around quarterback play. So they've got some young talent, some good defensive players they added to their squad, and they're looking to make a push this year with probably a really pissed off Rodgers after not being able to play last year and losing the division. So they got to hope that they can keep him.
Yeah, and I saw an article just today where Aaron Rodgers was calling out his young receiving core, saying he expects a lot better out of them. So I agree with you. We've got to fire it up Aaron Rodgers, and I think Green Bay would definitely be in their best interest to get a deal done, but I'm hoping they don't, and I'm hoping something crazy happens and maybe they'll decide to trade him or something, get him out of the division. We'll see what happens. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. Rams star defensive tackle Aaron Donald continues to hold out. LA GM Les Snead says contract talks with Donald and the team are, quote, in the same zip code, end quote, and hopes to get a contract done before Week 1. Although head coach Sean McVay said on Monday, quote, I don't think anything is going to change in the near future. What do you think of this contract stalemate with Aaron Donald? I mean, they went out and paid, it seems, everyone else but Aaron Donald, and now he's the last guy standing for LA.
Yeah, the thing that baffles me the most is that they signed Brandon Cooks to an extension, even though he hasn't played it down for them yet.
Yeah.
Where they didn't sign Aaron Donald, who's been trying to get an extension for longer than Cooks has even been on the team. And we've already talked about Cooks and his the way he's kind of hopped around teams, which just adds to the confusion. But I feel like they've got to try and sign this guy. He's possibly the best player on their team. I think it's pretty safe to say he's the best player on their team. The unfortunate thing for him is that he doesn't play at the most important position on either side of the ball. Even though he's got almost as many sacks as Khalil Mack over the even in like 3 fewer games or something like that, which just shows how dominant he is as a defensive tackle. But you have to try and get this guy signed. But you also you can't break the bank for him. Like I said, defensive tackle is not the most important position. You can't be shelling out $18 million, $20 million a year. Look at the Dolphins with Sue after they signed him to a massive deal, and they didn't win a single playoff game because of it.
Yeah. So if Aaron Donald wants that kind of money, though, you're saying you wouldn't give it to him?
Oh no, definitely wouldn't. Not if I'm the Rams.
Yeah. So that puts him in an interesting situation, and we'll see if Donald gets that money that he's looking for. I'm sure.
I think if I'm the Rams and he wants, there's been rumors that he wants quarterback money, and if that's the case, I'm going to just franchise him until the franchise tag ends up being too expensive, or league restrictions prevent me from franchising him anymore. Because I think right now the defensive tackle franchise is at like 13, 14 million, something like that. That's significantly better than 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes, and Hopefully they get that figured out soon. They're going to need Donald on the field come week 1.
Yeah, they're trying to make a Super Bowl push this year. They need him on the field. He is the most important person on the defensive side of the ball for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. They brought in Sue to be a sidekick, not the guy on the D-line. So we'll see what happens there in LA. Another star defensive player on contract holdouts is Raiders star defensive end Khalil Mack. He has not talked to head coach John Gruden yet, and no talks between Mack, his agent, or the Raiders since February, I believe. At least Mack and the team. Khalil is seeking a new contract, and both sides seem far apart. Rumors have surfaced recently that the star player could be on the trading block. Do you think it is a smart move financially or a really dumb move to possibly trade Khalil Mack away from Oakland?
Oh, man, when your defense is the worst part of your team and he's the only good player on that defense,
Yeah.
It's difficult to see the benefits of trading him away. But if they're dealing with they're dealing with cap hell right now, really, and they've even asked stud left tackle Donald Penn to take a pay cut this year, and he's refused to do that so far.
Mm-hmm.
So they're obviously trying to make space for someone, and you can only assume that would be their best defensive player, since he's the guy that they're looking to have him get paid. So it would be really difficult, I think, to trade him, but I also think that it might be. Depending on what you get back for him. The problem with these situations is very often teams lose leverage when they know that they, they're gonna lose the guy essentially, or they trade him, and so then you tend to get less back. His market value's got to be, a really good player and a third rounder probably, or 2 first rounders in the coming years, and what team's going to be able to give that up? It's going to be a contender, one would think, that's able to give that kind of equity up for a single player.
Yeah, and this is another team, Oakland, that's trying to make a championship run this year. They got Gruden. Their expectations are high. They added some free agents. They're trying to play the Rams in the Super Bowl, and I think that is a lot less likely if Khalil Mack's not on the team. But speaking of a trade possibility, that would be interesting. Seahawks veteran star safety Earl Thomas to the Seahawks, quote, "Offer me an extension or trade me." Earl Thomas has reached out to not only Jason Garrett of the Cowboys, but Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders. What do you think about a possible trade of Earl Thomas and a draft pick to the Raiders for Khalil Mack?
I think that could be a possibility. You've got a disgruntled Earl Thomas that's wanting out or wanting extended. You've got Khalil Mack kind of in the same situation. The Seahawks have lost a number of players on their defense, especially on their defensive line. Cliff Abrill's not coming back because of health issues. Michael Bennett,
Mm-hmm.
is no longer on the team. So they could really use a veteran presence up front, and Khalil Mack, he can play pretty much any of the outside positions on defense. So you could trade Earl Thomas, who's a few years older, and probably a second rounder or a third round pick for Khalil Mack. I think that could work, but I don't know that the Seahawks are going to be looking to do that. I would think right now that they're in rebuilding mode. But I also think that Pete Carroll is kind of on the hot seat, and he'd be willing to dish out picks that he doesn't have to be making anyways if he gets canned.
Yeah, I'm all for this trade. I like it. I say do it. What's Earl Thomas doing for you, Seattle? Move him, and Seattle definitely needs a pass rusher. Bring in Khalil Mack. The Legion of Boom is done, and bring in a guy with star power. And Earl Thomas obviously wants out. Let's make I think this is a win-win for both sides. And So we'll see if they get it done. You think the Raiders, minus Khalil Mack, but add Earl Thomas, are they a better defense or worse?
I think that's worse because I think the defense is built in the trenches.
Yeah.
And he's definitely been their biggest pass rusher over the last 4 years. He's gotten at least 10 sacks every year. And to eliminate that and fill it with some unproven talent or they just don't have someone to even come close to replacing him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would make Earl Thomas as good of a player as he is. It would not make him as valuable because they could just throw away from him.
Yeah.
He's on the left, throw to the right. So I think that Mack is better on the Raiders than Thomas is. But if they get that third round pick, then they could look maybe to the next year for being a year they really compete.
Yeah, and if with Mack not talking to Gruden yet, maybe that means that he doesn't really want to play for John Gruden. And I'm all for this. If Mack's not going to be on the field, bring in a guy who wants to be on the field. Make both parties happy. Let's get that done. Get it done, Oakland. Get it done, Seattle.
Yeah, John Gruden of all people should know you have to keep the defensive players that the other coaches have put together to win. He of all people should know that.
Yeah, it's like going to Tampa and getting rid of Warren Sapp.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's switch to some contract extensions. The Vikings signed star wide receiver Stephon Diggs, responsible for the Minneapolis Miracle, to a 5-year, $72 million deal, $40 million guaranteed. Good payday for Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, it's a great payday for him. I think it's a pretty good signing for the Vikings. That it's not a massive overpay, and it's a pretty young guy at Diggs. Mm-hmm. He's 24, 25, I think, so he's still got plenty of room to improve, and should have the best of his career there in Minnesota with Kirk Cousins, since he'll be there for at least 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep your number one wide receiver happy with a brand new quarterback coming in. Good vibes in Minnesota, gotta be. Speaking of the Seahawks, they signed left tackle Dwayne Brown to a 3-year, $34.5 million extension, $14.5 million guaranteed this season. And another sign that Earl Thomas is not getting that contract extension if they're shelling out the money to their left tackle.
Yeah, I think it's a sign that they're going to commit to trying to keep Russell Wilson upright, knowing that he is the way that they're going to win this year. Because with all the losses on defense, they're going to struggle to be able to shut down other teams like they had in years past. So they're going to rely on Wilson's throwing and scrambling abilities, and so they're going to hope that Dwayne Brown can come back to his Pro Bowl form and be able to be a great blindside blocker for him.
Which I agree with this. I think Seattle's making a smart decision here. The defense is going to take a pretty big step back this year, but keep your quarterback healthy, keep him protected, keep those blindside hits away from him. Titans signed tight end Delaney Walker to a 2-year, $17 million deal, including $8 million signing bonus. The Titans also signed safety Kenny Vaccaro to replace an injured John Cyprien, who's out for the year with a torn ACL. So 2 good signs for the Titans. Good to see Kenny Vaccaro get a job in time for the season. You like those moves in Tennessee?
Absolutely. Delaney Walker's been one of the favorite targets for Marcus Mariota, and I know they're wanting to have him grow a lot this year. So keeping his number one target is definitely the right move. And Walker is 34, so he's a little bit older. Still productive though. Last year, he had over 800 yards and only 3 touchdowns, which is low from what his normal was, but still a productive guy. And they didn't sign him to a super long extension, so they should be able to keep him very productive. And Kenny Vaccaro is a good safety when he can stay healthy. Dealt with some injury concerns when he was in New Orleans, but they're looking to have their defense improve, and it's good to have another talented guy across from Cyprien, who probably is not quite. Cyprien probably isn't as good as Vaccaro, but hadn't dealt with the injury issues that Vaccaro had. So they could actually be getting an upgrade, I think.
Nice. Yeah, good moves, Tennessee. In the same division, the Colts signed tackle Jamarcus Webb. I don't know how much good that does, but they did it. Saints.
Their left tackle got injured, Costanzo.
Okay.
And he should be back for the start of the season, but they definitely want to make sure that they have some depth there, so that they can keep Andrew Luck healthy, because they see how awful they are when he's not.
Yeah, and then they had another guy retire unexpectedly, I believe it was like last week. Another offensive lineman, so just getting some depth, and that's always a good thing. The Saints sign offensive lineman Don Barclay and veteran wide receiver Michael Floyd. We talked about him a couple weeks back. I don't know how much Michael Floyd has left in the tank, but you can't ask for a better quarterback to throw you the ball than Drew Brees.
Yeah, he's still relatively young. He's only 28, so he first round pick. He's shown some promise over the years, and he's gonna have to compete because there's some talent in front of him. Michael Thomas obviously is the number one receiver, and then they stole away Cam Meredith from the stupid Bears.
Good job, Bears.
Want to keep him for some silly reason.
Yeah.
Ted Ginn's there too. So he's definitely got some guys to try and beat out for the job on a team that, if they play like last year, looks to be more run heavy anyways. So he might be fighting just for a special teams position, but hopefully he can stay make the squad and actually be productive. Would be a good redemption story for a guy that struggled with off the field issues.
Definitely a Michael Floyd fan. Hopefully he gets his shit together and has a productive year. Veteran corner Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie is receiving interest from the Seahawks and the Chargers, but no deal official yet. It'd be nice to see him get a job. Panthers have a couple injuries. Corner Ross Cockrell suffers a fractured left tibia and fibula in his leg and will undergo surgery. No timetable for return. Carolina also loses tackle Darrell Williams, dislocates his right patella and tears his MCL, his right knee, and hopes to return for the second half of the season. Jets running back Elijah McGuire breaks his foot, but not considered season-ending. And I've got a quote for you here, Gavin, that you should be pumped about. Your boy, Skip Bayless, on on Browns defensive end Myles Garrett. Quote, "Myles Garrett reminds me of Dwight Howard." What do you make of that quote? Is that
I don't know what to make of it because I'm not sure what he's insinuating.
I know, it's so broad.
I don't think Myles Garrett's that tall.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks he's Superman. I mean, are we talking 2010?
Yeah.
Dwight Howard? Are we talking 2016 Dwight Howard? I mean, he's really leaving that open to interpretation. Good work, Skip.
Skip, always with the good quotes. And then I got another thing I want to run by you. I was talking with on Twitter with Pro Football Talk producer, what's his name, Rob Stats Guerrera, and we were talking about the best wide receivers of all time. And we both agreed Jerry Rice is number one. And then I said Randy Moss number two. He disagreed with me. He believes Terrell Owens is number two. And then I said that Moss is ahead of Terrell Owens and Calvin Johnson. And he responded that Calvin Johnson is not in the same conversation as T.O. or Randy Moss. What do you think of that?
Wow, that's...
I was like, you're going to have some Lions fans upset at you for this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think about that. I mean, I think one thing that Randy Moss and T.O. definitely showed more than Calvin did, at least, on the outside, was competitive nature.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin was more reserved. He was a quieter guy. And that's not to say he wasn't competitive, but it's, with Randy Moss and T.O., they were very outspoken. and very driven to get the best out of their teammates and vocally express that. So it's easy to see that from them, where it's hard to say, exactly what Calvin had, as far as that goes. But I will also say that I was going to defend Randy Moss and say that he didn't have as good a quarterback situation over the years as T.O. did. But I will then defend Calvin Johnson and say the exact same thing. He dealt with Dan Orlovsky, John Kitna in his latter years, which really in his early years wasn't super great either. A young Matt Stafford, a struggling team just as a whole, being really the only option for a long time there. So, well, definitely he doesn't deserve to be in the conversation for best receiver of all time. I think that to say that, I don't know, it's and I'm probably super biased in this, but I disagree with this Pro Football Focus gentleman.
Pro Football Talk. Stats is what they call them. Another thing on that, what was I going to say? Oh, I responded that Calvin Johnson and Randy Moss are the only two guys that I've ever seen that consistently win jump balls when defended against triple and quadruple coverage. Like, they were the best I've ever seen. It didn't matter how many guys you were putting on them. Stafford or Brady could throw the ball up deep, and these guys are going to come down with it. Yeah,
it's nice to be 6'4" and 6.
Yep.
And when cornerbacks are 5'10".
That's true. But either way you rank them, some all-time great wide receivers, and it's fun to debate that. So we'll be back on next week with our NFC preview for the 2018 season, and we'll cover the preseason games from week 1. Thanks for coming on, Gavin. Another successful episode.
For sure.
And we'll be back again next week. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, like, or leave a comment. And have a great week, guys. Peace out.